Start trading crypto today. Sign up for our step-by-step video series to get set up with the best trading tools, start analyzing charts, enter and exit a trade properly, and most importantly, see if crypto trading is right for you. Join us at bitlabacademy.com.
Welcome to Rice TV X. You've just tuned in for the latest transmission of Stranger Than Fiction. Today, I am joined by returning guest, Dr. KL, aka Mr. Beneficiary. I will include a link down below in the video description and above for the playlist that I created with all of his previous appearances. I invited him back on so that we can get a refresher of his course information and review this and look at it with new eyes and from a fresh perspective. There will be more videos to come in this series. Before we get into it, visit ricetvx.com and sign up for my mailing list so you never miss an update or new Rice TVX content. You will also find my various social media links and more. You can also find Rice TVX on Odyssey and Library, where I have a full catalog of my videos, post up extra content, and share other appearances. And you can also find Rice TVX on BitChute. Get your free half ounce of silver. Take full advantage of my partnership with Money Metals Exchange in 5 easy steps. 1. Visit moneymetals.com. 2. Be a first-time buyer. 3. Purchase a minimum of $100. 4. Use the promo code RICE. 5. Get a free half ounce of silver, and it's an additional way to support the channel. I will include links in the video description for everything I just mentioned, as well as everything shared on today's video. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on today's show is a returning guest, someone that most of the viewers have definitely enjoyed content from. He's an awesome educator. He's a teacher. He's a researcher. I am joined once again by KL, Mr. Beneficiary. KL, welcome back to the show. How is it going on, my friend?
Thanks for having me, Chris. Glad to be back.
Well, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to the conversation. And to clarify before we begin, I spoke with you a couple days ago. You recently went on SGT Report, which congratulations, that was a great show. And I was listening to that and thinking I wanted to get you back on, which I had mentioned to you a few months ago. And I was going to go back through the older content that we had done, take notes, and kind of continue. And I got the idea, and I thought it would be good for not only myself, but for the viewers to kind of start from the beginning and kind of get a fresh look at this. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'll be screen sharing this. This is the playlist that I put together with all the previous conversations. The first two, Collateralizing America History Lesson, Part 1 and 2, is what we're going to be going over today. And then KL has agreed to come back on to go over the previous lesson that we did after that, and then continue beyond. And I thought, kind of looking at this with new eyes and a fresh look would be really beneficial for not only myself, but everybody else. So thank you again, KL, for doing that.
You're welcome. And I think that it never hurts to go over previous research and homework. It sinks in a little bit better. And obviously you have a lot more knowledge than, from a year ago than we were talking back then. So I think it's beneficial always.
Totally agree. And, when you're learning information, you really want to have, when you're going to utilize the information that you're learning from your research, you want to have a really good, strong foundation. And in the legal fiction area, when you start going down a lot of different paths and looking at different teachers' methods and what does and doesn't work, some of it can get confusing. So that's where I thought it'd be really good to start back from basics to make sure that the foundation that I and others are trying to build is a good foundation to build upon.
Right. And for me, the philosophical foundation is always about, obviously everybody can tell something's wrong and always they want to know how to fix it. But to me, you have to go back and figure out the how and the why this happened. And if you can go over that basic foundation of the how and the why, then the solution or the remedy is usually a little bit easier to understand and easier to get. That's my point.
I agree. So as I did last time, I mean, I really respect you as an educator, so I'm going to let you just kind of take over. I will try to interject here and there with questions and things to that effect, and hopefully this will be very constructive again for everybody. So where do you want to begin, Mr. KL?
Well, I usually ask you a few questions, but there'll be some times when I'll ask you specifically some stuff. But I usually ask people, the main question is, how do the elite control us? Now, I use the word elite. You can use New World Order. You can use deep state. I don't care. They're all synonyms to me. But there's obviously people that are higher up than us that are making decisions for us. And for lack of a better word, it seems like they're cramming it down our throat, or they're coming at us 100 miles an hour with these changes. And, I'm trying to get you to understand how they, one, have the legal authority to do this and exactly how they're doing it. Okay. So, do you ever wonder why the government officials don't seem to follow the Constitution? Well, my question is, do they have to follow the Constitution? Everyone thinks the answer is yes, but I'm telling you, the answer is no, they don't. And I'll explain later.
Okay.
Why does it seem like U.S. citizens have no rights? I mean, I'm sure you've heard of many, many cases where people get railroaded in the current system today, the current court system. And there's a specific reason for that any U.S. citizen does not have the Bill of Rights in a courtroom. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm going to show you where the U.S. Supreme Court says that 10 times. Okay, so you have to learn how this happened in the previous 200 years, what their rulings were. And again, I'm going to go over these, exactly how U.S. citizens lost the Bill of Rights. Now, also, let's take, a couple of the things that have been happening in the current news. Can you get arrested in Russia and demand your constitutional rights, like that woman volleyball player?
Okay.
Grenier, I think is her name, right? So she was all upset that she's over in Russia, entering into their jurisdiction, and then saying, how come I can't have my constitutional rights? Well, that's a little ludicrous on its face. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, I agree.
I mean, to even expect that, to me, is just showing how immature that type of situation is. Let me give you another current one that happened a few years back. Colin Kaepernick. Did he have his First Amendment rights after he signed an NFL contract? Because that's what that was all about, right? His ability or his wanting to kneel when they didn't want to, right? He was declaring, that's my constitutional freedom of speech, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that what his claim was?
That's what he said. Yeah, that's what was said, yes.
That he signed a contract, an NFL contract. It's got 5 pages of behavior clauses. Now, I've read a standard NFL contract because I have a nephew that was offered one. So I know what's in the contract. So what I'm trying to tell you is that when you sign contracts, you can waive your Bill of Rights. No one ever tells you that. And I'm going to have the Supreme Court give you many examples that tell you that's exactly what happens. You can volunteer to waive those rights. No one took them from you. No one denied you of them. You voluntarily waived them when you signed a contract. And that's normally the issue. And that's normally the basic stuff that you got to understand. You got to stop shaking your fist at the government and start looking in the mirror, maybe what you might have done to contribute to the mess. Okay? So, one more generalized theory about like banks that give loans and they use collateral for it. I'm sure in your lifetime, Chris, you've borrowed money to buy a car or a house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you understand the principle. They hold the title, or they put a security lien on the title as collateral, so to make sure you pay the loan, right?
Correct.
And what happens if you don't pay the loan? You voluntarily said you can come liquidate and come get the property, right?
That's correct, yes.
So basically, again, I'm going to describe how our country has gotten into much trouble basically by just keep borrowing money. But in return, every time we borrow more money, the banks want more collateral, just like they would if you were borrowing money for a car or a house. The more they borrow, the more you borrow, the more collateral they want, which I think is a perfectly understandable, legitimate way to do business, right?
Yes.
Okay. Good. Now, and I also want you to remember that the District of Columbia is not in the Union. It's not one of the 50 states, right? It's a territory. Okay. So I think of Washington, D.C. as almost like a franchise of Mexico, because you have to understand that's a foreign entity as compared to any one of the 50 Union states. It is not in the same jurisdiction. Okay. Walking on the land in D.C. is completely different than walking on the land in one of the 50 states because it's a different jurisdiction. Okay. Which means you might not have the rights you have on the land as you would as you're walking into DC. Okay.
Which makes sense.
Case, Adam Kokesh, where he had, a permit to carry, and he took his, AR-15, his M16, and then went to Washington, D.C., and then strapped it on and walked down the street. So what do you think happened? They arrested him. Okay. Because he wasn't in Arizona where he lived, where he had the right to do that. He was in a foreign jurisdiction. So these are the things that we're going to go over, and how jurisdiction plays a huge role into what rights you might or might not have, depending on the circumstance. Okay.
Okay. Now, real quick, KL, before we begin, what I want to let people know is that if anyone is interested in receiving copies of these documents from today's video, you can email me with the information that you see on the screen. Put KL in the subject line. Also, KL does offer education, so I will have his contact and detail information below in the video description. Just realize that he just recently got inundated with a bunch of new people that are interested in learning about this via the SGT report. So he has some people helping him out with his team, but it may be a moment before you get a response. So I just want to let people know that in advance, but KL is working on things that will help him to expedite being able to respond to people's emails and such.
I'll get your email. It just might take a while presently because I'm so busy. But anyways, what the take home here
is, just for the hell of it.
Yes. Trust agreements are the mechanism of control that the elite use on us. I'm going to say it again. Trust agreements are the mechanism of control that they use over us. Okay. And they've been doing it that way for thousands of years. And so I'm going to help explain that and how exactly they do that. Now, Chris, did you watch Game of Thrones, or you were never in the military, correct?
I wasn't in the military, but I did watch the Game of Thrones, and I'm currently watching the new prequel, House of Dragons. Yeah.
Okay, so this goes, thousands of years back in time, right? And if you notice, everybody's got a title. Okay, title means there's a trust going on. The king gives the hand, that's a title. The queen, that's another title. And again, just look over with Prince Charles and the queen dying. He gets a new title. Now he's the king, right? So it's all about titles. Well, titles means there's a trust agreement going on. So in Game of Thrones, in the original one, Ed Stark, right, or Ned Stark, right, he was the king of the North, right? Mm-hmm. But he had to be granted that title. Now, in a trust, when you're the beneficiary of the title, there's also duties and obligations. So Mr. Stark had to give a percentage of his crops to the king. He had to pay a monthly rent, and he and his sons had to fight in all of the wars when the king wanted them to. That's the duties and obligations that are also associated with the title. Of course, he gets a lot of benefits from that also. All right.
Right.
So that's just an example of how a trust works. And again, the kings used to always say, I own the land by divine right. Well, I'll give you use of the land. Okay, a beneficiary gets the use of the land, but the king holds the legal title to the land. So he can say, I'll let you farm the land, but again, you got to give me a rent every month, and I get a percentage of the crops every month, and you and your sons got to fight for me. These are the agreements that were made all the time, hundreds and thousands of years ago. Okay, if you were in Rome and back in those days, if you wanted to be a Roman citizen, okay, they would offer protection. Okay, but in return, you had to pay taxes. Okay, so that's another trust agreement. All right. And one of the biggest examples of a trust agreement I can give is the money that you have in your pocket. Do you have any money on you, Chris, at all?
Unfortunately, I do have some cash on me. Yes.
All right, pull one out. Pull a dollar bill out.
Right. It wasn't in my pocket, but it was beside of me. I got $1 right here and a couple fives.
Whose money is that?
Well, if you would have asked me this question maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would have said mine.
Yeah, correct. But it's not.
Right. I've learned about this this Federal Reserve note.
Right at the top, it says Federal Reserve note, right? So guess whose money it is? It's the Federal Reserve's.
It's theirs.
But you have use and possession of the money, right? That's called beneficiary possession. But because it's their money, they can alter or change the purchasing power of the dollar, like they're doing right in front of you today, right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're recording this on the 21st of September, and anytime in the next hour or so from that where we're at now at 2:00 p.m. Eastern time, the FOMC Fed will come out, the Federal Reserve will come out with what they're doing with interest rates.
Well, the point is they're devaluing the dollar right in front of everybody's nose, aren't they?
They are. Because
they control it. That's the point. Even though the money's in your pocket, is not legally yours, you can't control it. Only they can control it. So that doesn't sound like a good deal, does it? But this
not when they're printing money into existence, like tons of money into existence over the past few years and devaluing it. No, not at all.
Right. But see, back when you either had silver or gold, or when we had gold-backed currency, they couldn't print like wildfire back then. And that was the whole reason to get rid of the real money in 33. And then all of this crap came in strictly because they took away the lawful money. And now we have these, what I call is monopoly money. You might as well be playing with Monopoly, buddy, because it's worth whatever they say it's worth. Which is,
well, there's a meme out that I like to share and show people, and I'll try to include it in the edit of the video. But it shows the modern remake of the dollars that they have come out with over the past few years, the different color variations, and put them side by side by each denomination on the Monopoly money, and the colors are actually the same kind of color patterns. But the really important thing that I try to get people to grasp is, if I was holding up this and let's say that this was a Monopoly bill, the only two difference, or even with this piece of paper, the only difference between these two pieces of paper is that you think one has value over the other. Right.
It's perception. It's perceived value.
Yeah.
It's not real value like gold and silver. It's just perceived.
True.
And that's the magician's trick. But we'll go over all of that as we go along here. Now, I want this, if you could throw up, this diagram.
Yes,
let me
sir.
Just talk about that for a second. This, if you get a copy of it, you need to put to memory. This tells you the three basic parties to a trust. The creator grantor is the person that creates the trust, like the Federal Reserve. The trustee fiduciary is the one that holds controlling interest, which again was the Federal Reserve. And if you go to the left on the beneficiary, that would be us. The beneficiary is equitable title, which is called use and possession of the property or the asset. He gets privileges and benefits, but has duties and obligations. It's also called a beneficial owner, operator, user, whereas the trustee is usually the employee, a payee, a franchisee. Also, remember that the beneficiary can be called the owner, but the trustee has ownership. Okay, two different things. Chris is the owner of his money, but in trust law, owner means all you have use and possession. If you check Webster's dictionary, it will say, well, maybe it's the legal title, but I'm telling you it's not. And this is, again, how they trick us into thinking what words mean. They have ownership. We usually just have use and possession of the thing. Okay? So the biggest factor, the takeaway from this triangle diagram also is he who creates controls. And I'll say that one again also. He who creates controls. So whoever the creator grantor is the guy that gets to pick the law form that the parties of the trust have to abide by. Okay? So when the Federal Reserve created the money, they picked Roman civil law as the law form that controls the money. Okay. So not the Constitution, not the Bill of Rights. The law form under that trust agreement is Roman civil law. You know, it's a combination UCC, maritime, admiralty. But the point is, you don't have the same rights in that law form as you do the Constitution. Go ahead.
Is that the same as what people refer to as statutory law?
Yes, that'd be another name for statutory.
So civil law, Roman civil law, commerce,
right.
mercantile.
Here is in just a second, but people call them different things. The judge might say statutory. Other people like to call it admiralty, maritime. I refer to it as Roman civil law because that's what I think they follow. Okay, which is more along that brings in the trust issues, and they recognize parties of a trust. That's why I teach it from that perspective, is because, again, if you learn in court whether you're the trustee or the beneficiary, it makes all the reason whether you're going to go home and not have to pay or not.
Right.
Okay. All right. So I will go over this again with some Supreme Court cases, but as a general thing, there are two governments in America. I'm not saying this. I'm telling you the Supreme Court of the United States of America is telling you this. Okay. So there's two governments, and there always have been operating at the same time, just like the Matrix movie. The Republic, which is a private mortgage trust agreement, again, it's a trust. What happened in 1789 is a trust agreement, and which is a civil government for all of the 50 Union State citizens. And then there's the Democracy Trust / jurisdiction, which is a public corporate trust, okay, which charged with providing the 19 enumerated powers for the states, you know, for international commerce. And I want you to think of the federal government as an HOA. Do you have an HOA where you live, Chris?
Actually, I do. I rent where I'm at, so the owner has to pay for the HOA. Right. But the homeowners association, for people, might be, what is he talking about?
But the principle is that the owner, whoever, you know, you're renting the house, has made a contract with that HOA for certain limited services. Correct?
Correct.
Mowing the grass, doing some other stuff, maybe picking up garbage, but it's limited. Now, when the Constitution was formed, that's actually the correct relationships, where the states hired the federal government to perform certain duties, and that was all. Okay. But obviously that's not what's going on today, but that's how it was originally set up. So I want you to think of the original federal government as really just an HOA. It's certain specific 19 enumerated powers, and that's it. Go ahead.
What's really interesting is somebody that I know just recently bought a house that is in a gated community that has a homeowners association, and they were mentioning because there, like you were saying, there are certain things that had to be done that are requirements. They will also restrict you from doing certain things. So they didn't like the color of the house, and they wanted to paint it.
Yep.
And they were only given so many different color options to be able to choose from to paint it, because if they decided to go with like, let's say, orange that didn't fit in with the neighborhood, it wouldn't even be allowed. The homeowner association would be able to stop the owner of the home, supposed owner of the home, from doing what they want with their property.
Right, because he contracted with them. Now, I am in the belief that you can amend that contract, okay, that you don't have to agree to every one of their demands. And also, the HOA can't tell them what clothes to wear or what car to buy, can they? Well, they could if you signed a contract allowing them to do it. So this is all about volunteering on a contractual basis what the power they have over you. Okay?
Right.
And I'm just telling you, you have the power to amend these things. You don't think you do, but you actually do. All right? So the current form of government found in every state of Florida, state of Georgia, state of Illinois is seemingly Republican in form, but is ultimately municipal, because every such state is really a body politic, not a geographical area. The states have been transformed into a political subdivision of the District of Columbia, which uses Roman civil law, which equates to exclusive, territorial, personal, and subject matter jurisdiction over its residents. U.S. citizens who do not physically reside in the District of Columbia are treated as residents of that municipality for legal purposes. And I think you would agree to that even though you live in a different state, you're treated as if you're a district citizen. And I'll show you how later, but again, the Constitution doesn't apply to U.S. citizens. The territory. And in the territory is either Roman civil law, which again I equate to the sea jurisdiction. All right?
Maritime Admiralty jurisdiction.
Maritime Admiralty, statutory, whatever. But
Okay.
it's whatever they want it to be. That's the point. And you, again, voluntarily accepted that law form. So let's go back in time and try to figure out how in the world did they do all of this? How do they get control of us? How do they get control of the money? Which really, in a way, is how they control us now. So you go back in time around 1800s, where the first Holy Roman Empire, the church gets started. They start their charter, okay? 1213, King George is in England. Now he's, big time sinner, and he doesn't think he's going to go to heaven. Okay, so he makes a deal with the Pope that, I want to go to heaven, but, I've made all of these sins. I've killed people, adultery, whatever. Okay, so the Pope says, okay, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll make sure you go to heaven, but you got to sign over all the legal title to the lands to me, and also all of the future lands that you might explore, and put it in my name. Okay, so there's a treaty that was done in 1213. Treaties are trust agreements. Okay, so what was happening is the king, again, would maintain the use and possession of the lands, but now the controlling interest or the legal title to his lands and the America, which isn't even for another 400 years, you know what I mean? We don't get here till like 1607, but he gets control of it. And this is why the Vatican has a role in everything we do in our country. Okay, because originally he was awarded the legal title to the land. Okay, so at that time, the Holy See, which was the Vatican, they retained the air jurisdiction. They granted jurisdiction over to the monarchs, and the sea jurisdiction over to the crown. Crown was basically the corporation that runs everything over there. So let's go forward another 400 years. We get to the Cestui Qui Vie Act of 1666. Now, I think most people have heard of this or read about it, but basically what happened was Rome, here we go again, Rome, because it controlled the land in England, they set up Roman estate trust in England to allow management of property belonging to unknown survivors of the Black Death and the Great Fire of London. So you had a lot of people die of the plague and the fire. So you had this property, and they're like, well, we don't know who it belongs to. And until someone comes back to claim, until we can figure all of this out, we're going to put all of the land into a trust, which again meant they're going to take legal control of the land, and then they get to decide what happens to it. Okay. So the citizens were presumed dead, and the estates were administered by the Vatican. And actually, back in 64 AD, this is even before Christ. Remember when Nero played when Rome burned? I'm sure you've heard of that one, right?
Yeah, because a lot of people speculated that Nero was the prophesized Antichrist.
Right. But what did the Roman Senate do? Again, is they said, well, since we have this fire and we don't know whose property is whose, we're just going to take it all and hold it in trust. Okay. See, what they're saying is we're not going to steal it. We're just going to put it in trust, and we'll give it to you, but you got to come back and claim it. We got to prove that property is yours. Okay.
Okay.
Well, this is always done under the disguise of I'm doing something good for you, but really it's bad because what they're trying to do is get control of everything. Okay. Now, next page, we'll go to 1776, Declaration of Independence. And what I want to say about that is the Declaration is actually where your rights come from, your independence. It's not from the Constitution. In the Declaration is where we declared what we wanted. That's really the document that is the most important one that I highly suggest everybody read it more than once. It's only 4 pages. It's 4 small pages. And if you read their complaints back then, you would be utterly amazed that over 90% of their complaints are the same things that are going on today that we would complain of. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when they were under a foreign political power, they wanted independence. Okay. So guess what? Right now, let's just hypothetically say you don't like the political power you're being ruled under. Guess what you have to do? you have to create your own declaration and you have to publish it. That's called due process. Okay. So part of what I do is exactly what the founding fathers did. I prepare a declaration, I become independent, and then I publish it, and then actually it becomes legal and the government accepts it, just like they accepted it in 1776. Okay, so let's fast forward 7 years. What do we do now that we got our independence, right? Well, the Treaty of Peace was held over in France, okay? And there was 3 parties to that treaty. And again, remember, a treaty is a trust agreement. Again, that means the titles are going to be split. Somebody's going to get equitable. Somebody's going to get legal. So the Treaty of Peace had Prince George, which represented England, the Duke of Brunswick, which was the Vatican City representative, and the United States. We sent 3 representatives, John Jay, John Adams, and Benjamin Franklin. And all 3 of them were esquires of the crown. All right. Now, at the time, we had borrowed money from France, the Bank of France, to help pay for the Revolutionary War. And at that time, it was 6 million livres. I'm going to call it dollars just to make it easy to understand. So the Treaty of Peace basically says, okay, here's what all 3 parties have decided. The Pope and the Vatican are going to retain the air jurisdiction, okay, where trust law is normally done. And we're going to give the sea jurisdiction to England, to the crown. Now, we actually agreed to this, and I'll tell you why in a second. And the United States of America is going to get the land jurisdiction. Now, we let the crown have the sea jurisdiction because, one, we didn't have a navy, and we wanted to continue to do international commerce, and because they could regulate that and police the waters, that's why we gave them and awarded them the sea jurisdiction at that time. Okay, so they didn't take. This is all part of a peace treaty, and again, we agree that we owe the bank in France $6 million. And at that time, under international bankruptcy laws, we had 7 years to pay that note off. Okay, so that meant the note was coming due in 1790. Okay, so that's why we formed the Confederation and all those states. What we were doing was trying to figure out either through tariffs or to get money to pay back these bills. Because if we can't pay the $6 million back, they're allowed to come back and liquidate property, which we don't want. Okay. Now, the debt was purchased, in between there, the debt was purchased by the Bank of England from France. So now we owe them. And what makes things worse, just like politicians today, just like back then, we borrow more money. Okay, so the amount now goes from 6 million to 18 million. So we're coming up on 1790, say around 1777, and we now owe $18 million. And guess what? We don't have it. Okay, so the Continental Congress knows it doesn't have it. So we form a constitution. The whole reason of a constitution, whether it be by us or any country on earth, is really a legal issue. A constitution, under a legal definition, is called a security with sureties created by a constitutor. So security means like a mortgage. We're going to put out a mortgage and agree that we'll pay off that mortgage. With sureties, surety is the definition is that one who agrees to take on the debt or obligation of another. So the 13 original states say, okay, our people and us, we're going to take on that $18 million debt. Okay, it's part of this. The construction, think of it as a Chapter 11 bankruptcy reorganization. Okay, so in the reorganization, we'll agree to pay that debt off. Okay, that's basically what we're doing. All right, but remember what I talked about with the bank loans. Well, that's a lot more money than that 6 million. We're going to need more collateral. So the bankers at that time said, I tell you what we'll do. If you give us legal title to all the federal land and buildings, start a central bank, we'll let you take that loan out 70 years. We'll let it go 70 years from now. Okay? So what do you think they did? That's what they agreed to. When they formed that constitution, it was a debt restructure. We agreed that we have the debt. We're going to pay it off in 70 years. Okay?
Okay.
So what is 70 years plus 1790? What's that get us to?
70 years plus 1790?
Yes, it brings us to
Oh,
1860,
right.
right? Does something important happen around 1860?
Sounds like the
Civil War.
Civil War, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to come back to the Civil War, but I'm just telling you, we had the big reorganization, debt restructuring in 1790. This is the whole point to what a constitution really is. And the fact that it's a mortgage and a trust all into one lets you know that, the 13 original states are the creator grantor. We hire a company called the United States. At that time, it's a company. So the company United States is going to manage the United States of America. Okay. I know it's confusing, but they did it this way on purpose. But it fits all the triangle. We, the people, and the posterity are the beneficiaries. The federal government, HOA company, is going to be the trustees, right? And the creator grantor will be the original 13 states. Okay.
All right.
So shortly after that, we get things moving in 1818. This is the first U.S. Supreme Court case. Not the first one, but the first one I want to recognize. U.S. versus Bevins. The court states establishes two separate jurisdictions within the United States: the federal territorial D.C. zone and the geographical union state jurisdiction. So already, again, just like I told you at the beginning, we have the 50-state land jurisdiction, and then we have the D.C. territorial jurisdiction, which is now under the C jurisdiction. So there are two different things going on at the same time. Okay, they're not the same. Okay, that's the one thing I want to make clear. 1821, another case, Cohens versus Virginia. It is clear that Congress as a legislative body exercised two species of legislative power, one limited but extending over the Union, again, the land jurisdiction, the other, an absolute exclusive legislation power over the District of Columbia. The legislative powers in the District of Columbia exist independently, and the legislative powers of the states can never conflict with it because it can never operate within the union. So this is telling you that, theoretically, this is like the separation of powers. Legislative cannot encroach upon judicial. Okay. That's what that really meant at that time, that you had to stay separate in your own box. You got to stay separate in your own box, which is really what they're doing. I know it seems like they're encroaching, but technically and legally they're being separate. Go ahead.
The two cases that you mentioned here in 1818 and 1821, U.S. versus Bevins and Cohens versus Virginia, are they Supreme Court cases or what?
Supreme Court cases.
Okay. I just want to kind of get clarity on that. And
yes,
also,
I'm only going to name one that's not, but this is a Supreme Court case.
When you talk about air jurisdiction of law, you say that trust falls under that. Is that also what people call ecclesiastical?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Like canon law?
Yes. Trust law is God's law, is ecclesiastical, canon law. It's all the same.
But I just want to clarify that.
It's the highest form of law on the planet. And that's what they go by. And if all of the elites are running everything on trust law and they will follow it to the letter, that's why I teach trust law. Because you want to know what they're doing and how they're doing it. And
right, you're breaking it down with facts to back up what you're saying, which is why
I want to be trust law just like they are. Okay, which means they're not susceptible to those other jurisdictions either. Okay. All right. So in 1822, the Pope he does a secret treaty at Verona. This is the very first article in that treaty. The high contracting powers being convinced that the system of representative government, which is again what we had, is equally incompatible with the monarchy principles as the sovereignty of the people of the divine right, in the most solemn manner to use all their efforts to put an end to the system of representative governments in whatever country it may exist, and to prevent it from being induced into those countries where it is not yet known. So already 30 years after we start our country, the Pope is already saying we can't have that. And we got to do everything we can to stop it and from ever spreading. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So that gets us to the 1860 thing. So now guess what happens in 1860? Now the debt has gone from $18 million up to $90 million. And remember, in the first trust, the first reorganization, you had 13 original states. But by now, there are 33 states in the Union. Okay, so there's 20 more. So now the 13 states go to the 20 states and they go, hey, we got a problem here. We're massively in debt. We signed on to pay it, but you haven't, and we want you to sign on to this $90 million debt now. Okay? You're not liable. We need you to sign on to it, though, because, we can't afford it. So guess what the South said? They said, go pound sand. We'll start our own country over here, and we won't be taxed like we are with you guys. We're already paying 80% of the tax. Why do we want to sign on to another $90 million of debt when we're already being treated like crap? Yeah, yes, they wanted slavery, but I'm telling you, the reason they walked out and the reason this happened is because they did not want to sign on as sureties to the debt. Okay? So what happens? A war breaks out, right?
Well, real quick, I want to pause because something that I find interesting, and I don't see a resolution from this, is when the southern states walked out of Congress, that was a Latin term that would be pronounced sine die.
Yep.
And that would...
1861.
What's that?
April 27th, 1861.
Right, which it basically means indefinitely, without any future date being designated as for resumption, indefinitely meaning the adjournment, which is what sendai is. So Congress, when the southern states walked out, they killed Congress.
Yes. So what?
And I don't remember Congress being reinstated in any real capacity beyond that point.
It comes later. But
okay.
When that happened, what did Lincoln do? Okay, Lincoln declared the HOA, federal government, bankrupt, and then he instituted the Lieber Code. So now he has the military take over the duties of the federal government. This is key. This is really key. Okay, so it's called the Lieber Code 100. It's all of the rules. Lincoln. Let me read this for it. The instruction manual for the government of armies of the United States in the battlefield. That's what the Lieber Code is. Okay. Now there's a new federal government that comes onto the scene, but not till 1871. Okay. So in that interim, the federal government is handling the federal government duties and obligations. Okay. So kind of like under military occupation, or at least the federal government is.
Okay, right? Now real quick, I also want to ask you about the Lieber Code. Did the Lieber Code also extend out the territory of the District of Columbia?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because when you talk about what was the term that you used? It was something to do with districts, district citizen. Everything in the United States is broken into federal districts. So there's federal courthouses. And like here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, I have a federal courthouse. And when I walk into that courthouse, technically, I'm in Washington, D.C.
Right.
But at the same time, the whole entire district is a part of Washington, D.C. So between the Lieber Code and other things, and mainly the Lieber Code, I believe it extended out the District of Columbia enough to those districts to basically make all of continental United States and the 50 states to be a part of the District of Columbia.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure I understood that correctly from my research.
Right. Federal district courthouse. What's the word district mean? It means territory. It means DC. You're telling you. It's right in front of your face.
So all 50 states are part of the federal district jurisdiction.
Yes.
Okay. Right. And that's part of the fuckery.
Just like you said, I got it here. Congress created 5 military districts in 10 southern states. These commanders appointed judges, courthouses, to have military tribunals to deal with any rebels that were still left. This created a new law form called Presidential Admiralty. These courts displayed stars and stripes with heavy gold fringe. Okay.
Where is that at in your notes?
And now in a federal district courthouse, there'll be a flag in the courtroom. And does it have gold fringe surrounding it? Yes, it does. Okay. So just like then, just like now, it's under military occupation, which means it's being run by the Commander-in-Chief, Article 2. Okay. District courts were created by Article 1, but they're run by Article 2. And both of those are in the sea jurisdiction, not the land jurisdiction where your Article 3 is. Okay. It's separate and distinct. Remember that. Okay. Now, what happens after the South loses the war? Okay. Now the debt went from 90 million, I think it was 2.5 billion. So now what do we do? Okay. Well, we got to have another Chapter 11 bankruptcy reorganization. Okay. Because we owe a lot more debt. But, the bankers say, same thing. I tell you what we're going to do. First time, we got legal title to all the federal land and buildings, but this time, we want all of the legal titles to all the state land and all the state-owned buildings. Now, again, what's that mean? That means they got to pay property taxes and they got to pay a monthly rent. Remember the King example I gave you before, okay? So that property, even though they're using it, they got to pay rent and they got to pay taxes. And that ever since we started, 1790, it's been like this, okay? It's bankers wanting more collateral to lend more money, okay? So they also say, if you give us the legal titles to that, thus by putting all that stuff in trust, okay, and everybody's got to pass the 14th Amendment. That's another stipulation of the restructure, that the states that come back into the Union now have to pass the 14th Amendment. Okay, we'll agree to all of that, and we will push the debt off for another 70 years, and everything will be cool again. All right, so what do you think the politicians said? Oh, sounds good to us, right? So again, it was just like today. We keep pushing off the debt, and we try to restructure it later.
Right.
It's been going on since day one. It really, there was a time frame. I got to be honest with you. And from 1934, from 1913, there was no central banks. It was the most productive 70 years I think we had in the history of our country. And at that time, sugar was 10 cents a pound, and 70 years later, it was only 11 cents a pound. So in 70 years, inflation only went up 10% when you don't have a central bank. So you see how much better life can be if we don't have this central banking. Inflation is kept under control.
Right. No, I agree. No, real quick, I want to pause you. 14th Amendment, where everyone, including the newly freed slaves, are made U.S. citizens. Because part of what you teach and what I've been learning about is this idea of status correction.
Mm-hmm.
And you're very factual. You back up everything. So my thing that you've used the term union state citizen. I've heard people say American national, American citizen, state national, state citizen. Was there, prior to being a U.S. citizen, was there an officially recognized status?
Yes.
And what was that actually called?
Two terms that union state citizen and American national are synonyms. That's what, and they also sometimes used American free men. Of course, men meant men and women, but there were actually three terms that meant the same thing: American freeman, union state citizen, and American national. Okay?
But we don't use American freeman because the whole free man on the land thing got blown out of proportion with this.
Oh, that must mean we're talking slavery. I mean, it's a term I wouldn't even use myself.
Right.
Just can conjure up, stuff feelings that aren't warranted anyway.
Because that's been my big argument to a lot of people is, where are you getting these
terms?
Yeah, American national or union state citizen, because I haven't seen official documentation like, here is your American citizen. Now, I do have a book called American Citizen Reference.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll grab that here in just a moment while you're talking.
Well, citizens, the word citizen, people think are bad, but really citizen means you're a beneficiary of a trust. Okay, that's the good news.
Citizen, beneficiary of a trust.
That's what citizen really is, yes. It's not, okay. It's a good connotation if you're in the 1789 Constitution, but if you're in the 1871 Constitution, that's not a good thing. Okay, but it really just means you're a beneficiary. Think of it like that instead, okay? Okay. Now, 14th Amendment, you can be back. No, I can hear you. I'm going to read section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state in which they reside. That's where the union state citizen term comes from. Okay. It also comes under Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution, which I have in here. So I'll read it later because I know I've got it in here.
Real quick. Let me show you this. Let me switch myself here. Okay.
Okay.
American Citizens Manual of Reference.
Okay.
And it says view of United States of North America and the several states and territories.
Yep.
I'll put a link down for the information for the book. It's written in 1840, prior to the 14th Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be a copy of the original cover.
Yep.
And this is the only thing that I've seen that says something like American citizen, but it's not technically like official. I mean, it does have seals and stuff on it, but I don't think W. Hubert Hadley was like official, like this was sanctioned by the government. I don't know if that's the case or not, but.
Well, I think, that would be American citizens. When we started doing international treaties, on a basis of international law, you're considered a national. That's how they refer to people in the states or nationals, whether they're from our country or their country. So I think they put together at that point, American national citizen, as a reference to not only just your country, but that's also an international term.
Okay.
I think that,
and I really wanted to get clarity on that because that was been kind of one of my stumbling blocks looking into this, because even Anna von Reitz wasn't really giving me an answer of where they were getting state citizen or state national.
I know where she gets hers. They get hers from 8 U.S.C. 1101A, Section 21. Okay, so their term state national is defined under U.S. code. Well, I don't do that. I'd rather have my definition come from the Constitution, Article 4, Section 2. All citizens are citizens of their respective state. I think of their respective union state. My authority is the Constitution. They claim the authority is a U.S. code.
Which code again?
Huh?
Which code again? Can you repeat that?
8 U.S.C. 1101A, I think, paragraph 21. This is what they claim.
And you're using the Constitution.
David Strait and Anna use code as their authority as a definition of who they are. I think that's wrong because you can't say I'm a man on the land, but my authority is the sea jurisdiction.
Okay? Right. You're using the. I get it.
You're mixing. You're commingling. I say I'm a man on the land according to Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution. That's where my citizenship is defined.
So what do you call yourself with your status correction?
Well,
are you no longer a U.S. citizen? What are you?
I was born in Illinois, so I'm an Illinois Union State citizen. The reason I use Illinois is because that's where my rights are. I was born in that state. I was born on the land, and I will always be an Illinois Union State citizen, even if I live in New York or California. My rights were derived from my birthplace, and it is a birthright in this country to have your Union State citizenship at birth, not your United States citizenship. That does not happen at birth. Okay, that happens later.
Do you use the terminologies of American citizen or American national, or do you just stick with states?
American national, synonymous with Union State citizen.
One and the same, meaning the same thing, synonymous.
But they are not the same as a state national or a U.S. national. Those are statutorily defined terms.
Right, which would be federal sanctioned statuses.
That's only good under federal territory jurisdiction. I don't want to be under their jurisdiction.
Okay.
Why would I want to do that?
No, I preach. Sorry. I know we got a little like the sound. We have a sound delay issue, and I apologize. So I'm trying to make sure I'm not talking over top of you, but I really appreciate you letting me clarify that. And you've actually explained it better than anybody else. I just need to stay more focused on you, my friend, and what you got going on.
Glad you asked, because I get the question all the time. What's the difference between a state national and a Union State citizen? I get that all the time in emails. So people are asking the same question you're asking, because to them it's confusing. Why is it a little bit different? There's got to be a difference because the words are different. they all can't mean the same thing. You know, they all are saying the same thing you're saying.
Right.
Okay? Yes.
Well, hopefully, yeah, and I kind of try to think as the viewers think too as well. So yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
Okay. So war's over. 14th. Oh, let's go back to the 14th Amendment. I'm going to read it. All persons born or naturalized. Well, first of all, why do we have it? Well, you got a bunch of the slaves that are here, and they're not citizens of the Union States because they weren't born here, right? So just like if we had Mexican nationals in our country right now that weren't born here, they wouldn't be citizens, right? Don't we have a very similar situation going on? Yes. So what they did was they said, instead of having the slaves do a naturalization, which takes 7 years or 5 years, which they could have gotten, they just could have waited, got naturalized. And if they had children, the children would have been Union State citizens. But, you know, again, you think it was different then, but the outcry was, what do we do for them now? Okay. Well, that's what the 14th Amendment was supposed to fix, was we'll give them a citizenship. We'll call it a citizenship of the United States, but it's not a Union State citizenship. So really the jurisdiction of that citizenship was under DC and the territory. It's not under the Union States, but it made everybody feel better.
Right.
Okay.
And feelings are all that matter, right?
All that matters. And again, you think we're the only ones doing this crap now. I'm telling you, they were doing it 150 years ago. So anyways, 3 years after that, that brings us to 1871. Well, what happens by then? All the states are bankrupt. Okay. And we want to bring in a new federal government because the last one was bankrupt. So the Vatican forms a new Delaware corporation called the United States of America, Inc., Incorporated. So now you have the United States of America, Inc., is going to be the HOA for the United States of America Union. Wow, is that confusing? Okay.
Yeah.
So
very confusing, but I guess on purpose.
Yeah, they did it on purpose. But the biggest thing is because DC incorporates itself, you know, it was a company, now it's a corporation. Well, what's a corporation? What's its ability? Well, it can start franchises, right? So it goes to the states who are basically, everybody's broke from the war, right? Massively in debt. They go, the new corporation goes, I tell you what we're going to do. We'll start paying all of your employees because you're broke, okay? But there's going to be a new corporation formed. Instead of the Illinois state or the Florida state, we're going to form a corporation called the state of Illinois, in the state of Florida, in the state of New Hampshire. That's, you see how they start bringing in the corporate jurisdiction.
I do, but since you said that, this also makes me want to ask you, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do it this way, so I appreciate. What about those areas, especially in rural, mainly rural areas that are considered unincorporated?
I'll get to that in 1933.
Okay.
But that just, I'm pretty sure it's in my notes, but what happens is they become conquered territories. Under that Trading with the Enemy Act, even those areas become conquered, okay, by the act of the proclamation, and they're considered territories now.
Okay.
Territories are under sea jurisdiction, commander-in-chief. Okay.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't mean to jump ahead, but yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Great question. It's a great question. All right. So I think of it as this, that we have the land jurisdiction, but there's this umbrella that seems to be over everyone. And if you're standing underneath that umbrella, you're under the sea territorial jurisdiction. Okay. But you don't realize you could walk out from underneath that umbrella and you're going to be right back on the land like you're supposed to be because you're already there. Okay. You have to get out from underneath the umbrella. All right.
Makes sense. Yes.
How to do that as we go. Okay. So there's a restructuring going on and a new constitutional trust. And remember what I said about Constitution. It's really a debt reorganization, right? That's what's really going on. So we have another Chapter 11 bankruptcy. We form a new trust. All right. So flip up the one with two triangles. All right. So let's just go over the top one. The top one is the 1789 Constitutional Trust, the reorganization where the 13 states are the creator grantor. The federal government is the trustees, and we, the people, and the posterity, are the beneficiaries. Now move it up to the blue triangle. Okay. This is the 1871 Constitution.
I got it where you can see both at the same time.
Right, great. So again, in the first, it's called the Constitution for the United States of America. In the second Constitution, it's called the Constitution of the United States of America. Okay.
Okay.
The one word is different, which means it's a different entity. It's a different trust. They're going on at the same time. It's just we're going to form a new one. Okay. And in that trust, the beneficiaries are now going to become the government, and we, the people, or the citizens of the United States, those 14th Amendment citizens or U.S. citizens, are going to become the trustees, which is another name for the payee, the guy that's liable. Okay?
What's interesting too is I just thought about this, like looking at the difference between the two, you know, the Constitution for and the Constitution of, because I've also heard when people talk about we, the people, that this is supposed to be a government of and for the people.
Okay.
Which kind of almost, in a sense, would almost be like what you were mentioning with the Pledge of Allegiance, where you see the duality.
Yes, yeah, I do. But what I'm trying to show in the diagrams is that there's two different trusts. There's two different constitutions, which means there's two different jurisdictions. Blue, I represent a statutory, okay, Article 1 and 2. In red, I always designate as the flesh and blood land jurisdiction, okay? So you've got two trusts going on. Which, you're a party of which trust? Or I should ask you, Chris, if you had a choice, would you rather be a party to the top trust or the bottom trust?
To the top.
Correct. So now, what do you think a new declaration does for you? It declares that you want to be in the first trust and no longer in the second trust. That's what a political status change does.
So it's opting out and ending your contract with the HOA.
You know what? I'm going back to the other one. And another analogy that I use is that when you're born on the land in the 50 states, they put a red coat on you or a red shirt. Okay. But later, through contracts that you sign for either Social Security or to vote or to do a TSA pre-check, you're now agreeing to be a United States citizen, which puts you in a different trust, different jurisdiction. You put a blue shirt or a blue coat over your red coat. Okay. So when the government sees you, all it sees is the blue coat or the blue shirt, right? So it is presumed that you're a U.S. citizen. Whereas if you just took the blue coat off or the blue shirt off, you would automatically revert back to your birthright red status.
Correct. Now, one thing that I do want to specify to people is that in watching these course information that Dr. KL has put out, is you're not going to get all the answers of how to do things in these videos. That's the reason why on a private level, because this is how KL operates, is privately, that's where you can learn a lot more about what KL is teaching into a full example. I mean, we've got plenty more videos we're going to be doing together, but it's just kind of scratching the surface on all the education that KL offers beyond these sessions that are for free.
Right. This is all about trust law. This is how they run everything. Okay. Look at the blue diagram. U.S. citizens are over as the trustees. Okay. As a trustee, your duty is to defend the trust. When a charge is brought against the trust, who has to defend the trust? The trustee. Okay. So let's go to a court case. It goes on every single day. They give you a speeding ticket and they go, oh, Mr. Chris Rice, you know, next case. He calls you up. They say, are you Mr. Rice? Okay. Now what he's really asking you is, are you the trustee of the Mr. Rice Trust? So if you say the word yes, you said, I'm the trustee. Okay. Which is another word for defendant, because he defends the trust. Okay. So they're talking trust language using the words defendant that you don't understand. Okay. The defendant.
To establish.
Go ahead.
And they're doing that to establish jurisdiction.
Yes. Yes. When you said the word yes, you went under their jurisdiction. You said, I'm guilty and I'm going to pay. So later, when he does say, how do you plead? if you say not guilty, guilty comes from the word gilden, which means to pay. So you've already said, I am guilty, I will pay, but you know what? I'm going to dishonor you and I'm not going to pay you today. That's what you're saying when you say not guilty. Okay, you've already agreed that you're going to pay and you're going to take care of it just by saying the word yes. Okay, you see how they really tricked you and deceived you with words, what you think means something that don't, all because you don't know trust law.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, and that just as simple as that. I know it's really more complicated, but I'm telling you, on a level when you learn the three basic positions of the trust, you can start figuring out that everything around you is a trust. The bank account is a trust. The car insurance is a trust. Your credit card is a trust. Everything. Why do you think they make that symbol?
That's why I was doing it.
Okay, because they're telling you this is how we rule over you. The pyramid is the trust triangle.
Own nothing, control everything.
That's the symbol they're using, is the trust triangle that they've used for thousands of years. Okay, I'm just trying to explain it to you so you can understand it. All right.
And that was John D. Rockefeller who said, own nothing, control everything, which is really the basis.
Right. In the private, you actually want to do that. When you make private trust, you want to be the trustees. But in the public, you want to be the beneficiary. Because in the public, if you're the trustee, you're the payee, you're the liable guy. And that's what they want. They want you to pay them so they can be the beneficiaries, when really it's the opposite, that they're the trustees and you're the beneficiary. But
you're Mr. Beneficiary.
Yeah, they've tricked you, right? So I'm the beneficiary in the public. Absolutely correct. Because I don't want to be the trustee. I don't want that liability. So just you keep it over there with you, and I'll be fine with that. You know,
10-4.
I won't step inside your sandbox, because bad things happen when I step inside that sandbox. Okay. All right. I'm going to go back to a few Supreme Court cases. Big one, 1871, the slaughterhouse cases. These were a bunch of cases. City of New Orleans makes a new law shutting down all the slaughterhouses in the city. They say it's not healthy. People are getting sick, so we want you to move out of the city. Well, the Butchers Union sue under the new 14th Amendment due process clause. The consenting opinion of the Supreme Court states that privileges and immunities under the 14th Amendment of the United States citizenship do not include the Bill of Rights. They ruled that the 14th Amendment privileges and immunities did not apply to citizens of the United States. Remember, it's different than a Union State citizen and a citizen of the United States, two different entities. And if you claim that you're a party to that trust, that blue trust, guess what? You don't have the Bill of Rights. Just like today in their courtroom, you don't have the Bill of Rights. Okay? They do not apply to citizens of the United States, only to citizens of the several states, Union states, and that U.S. citizens were clearly distinct from citizens of the several states. Okay? Distinct, different. I'm going to go back to the 14th Amendment again. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state in which they live. So that it just told you there's two different citizenships right in the 14th Amendment. There is the citizenship of the United States and the citizenship of the several states. They're distinct. They're different. I'm giving you the U.S. Supreme Court cases that tell you this. Okay?
Real quick, and I'm sorry to do this, but again, this is one of the reasons why I want to do this. I've heard things about in 1933-ish when the Banking Act took place, the creation of securities, the SEC, the confiscation of gold, and I guess us going into more of a full commerce system, that all of the old Supreme Court laws before 1933 don't hold any validity? Not
in the district court, because they come in with in 1938. There's two cases. I'll go over this later. They do away, and they get away. Common law is outlawed. Okay, and they bring in the federal rules of civil procedure. See, everybody thinks this has been going on. This is very recent. This is not even 100 years old. So
right.
They had to bring in they bring in the new courts with the new rules. They do away with common law. They merge equity with their Roman civil law, because they keep equity, which is the small sliver of where Article 3 is. So they give us remedy, but they hide it. When they merge them together, they do a merger, and they tell you it's just the district. It's They don't tell you it's inside there, somewhere inside. In the circuit court, you can definitely find it, but you can actually get it in the district. But you got to know what words to say. So when they merged it, they were trying to hide it from everybody.
But now all courts that operate in the United States are technically under federal jurisdiction and under
Not
federal.
all.
Not all? Okay. What would be the exceptions?
The U.S. Supreme Court, okay, the appeals, the state Supreme Courts, federal district, Article 3, an Article 3 judge in federal district court can give you equity jurisdiction. Equity meaning the land jurisdiction. But again, your pleading has to be correct. You have to ask for it because the default level, of course, is the federal statutory territory of jurisdiction.
Right.
So there's a book just on what you put on the face sheet of a pleading of the lawsuit. And if you don't ask for it at the very beginning, you've waived your right to ask and you get the default, which is the bad one. So you can ask for original jurisdiction. We call it exclusive equity. You can ask for it and you can get it. But if you don't, you waived. Remember I talked about you waived your rights. No one took them. You're supposed to be knowledgeable into asking and demanding them. Okay? So again, hold up the mirror. This is all about you learning how to navigate their system. Okay? You have the right. You have your unalienable rights. No one can take them. No one can steal them. The only thing that can happen is you can waive them. Okay? So I don't want to hear from anybody how the present government stole everything. They didn't. They tricked you into waiving them by signing contracts, which means you still have them. They didn't take them away from you. You still have them. Okay. You need to assert them.
Thank you for clarifying that as well.
All right. 1873, U.S. versus Anthony. The term resident and citizen of the United States is distinguished from citizen of one of the several states, in that the former is a special class of citizen created by Congress. Again, the 14th Amendment was created by Congress, legislation. The 14th Amendment recognized that an individual can be a citizen of one of the several states without being a citizen of the United States. So again, it's telling you, you get to choose which citizen you want to declare yourself to be. Do you want to declare yourself to be a Union State citizen, or are you going to declare yourself to be a citizen of the United States? Because they're different. They're in different trusts, which means they're in different jurisdictions, and they have different rights. I know everybody thinks it's all one thing, but it's not. All right. 1875, U.S. versus Khrushchev. Quote, we have in our political system a government of the United States and a government of each of the several states. Again, two different governments. Each one of these governments is distinct from one another. Each has citizens of their own. That's exactly what I just said. 1883, McDonald v. Jordan. He was not a citizen of the United States. He was a citizen and voter of his state. One may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. So again, I'm reinforcing that they have said over and over, there are two types of citizens. I'm telling you, it's up to you to be which one you want. And when you check that damn box that says U.S. citizen, you're the one that declared yourself the U.S. citizen. They didn't. You put the rope around your own neck. And when you check that box, you just went under their jurisdiction. So you got to watch what you're signing. All right. 1884, Juilliard versus Greenman. The federal government is a government for delegated powers, supreme within its prescribed sphere, which is the federal territory only, not the states, but powerless inside the union. So it's really telling you again that it's separate. And if you're inside the union on the land, they can't touch you unless you harm someone, okay? But they really don't have jurisdiction over you. You're allowing them. You're volunteering yourself to be under their jurisdiction. They don't have it until you surrender it or waive it, okay? 1894, Caja versus U.S. The laws of Congress have force only in the District of Columbia and other places that are within an exclusive jurisdiction of the national government. I'm going to jump ahead. School zones are federal, right, under the Buck Act. Post offices are federal territory. And guess what? Airports are federal territory. Okay? You're on their sandbox when you walk into an airport.
I didn't know that. Well, no.
Well, how else can they tell you to stop, take your close off, let me search you.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
Yes, it's a federal. The Buck Act is really what did it in 1940, and I'll go over that in a second. That's how they did it. They used the Buck Act. All right. Those who actually reside in the District of Columbia or who are construed to be a resident of the District of Columbia for legal purposes are treated as political subjects of D.C. Of course they are. 1895, Pollock versus Farmer. The court rules the income tax. They had put an income tax in, and then it goes up to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says it's unconstitutional for natural private persons, but you could tax the income from a corporation. So the idea is a corporation or an LLC or whatever is called federal privilege. You're asking for a permission slip, a piece of paper to govern or to do business as Kroger, or I want to do business as American Airlines. So that permission slip, which means, oh, you're under their jurisdiction, okay? And corporations are allowed under the Constitution to be taxed because it's a federal privilege to be doing the business. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And that's actually once, you'll see later in the 16th Amendment what happens. 1892, the Pledge of Allegiance is brought forward. Now I'm going to put you on the spot, Chris. Can you say the Pledge of Allegiance? Do you remember it?
I do. You want me to start?
Whip it off. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands.
Stop. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, Inc., Incorporated, and the republic. Didn't it just say those are two different things?
Yeah, because you're when you're adding an and, you're combining two different things, because otherwise it would be I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Right.
Or I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America Republic. Well, or the Republic of I get what you're saying, though. It definitely shows distinction.
Right. These little things are right in front of you, that there's two things going on. There's two governments, two different things, two different jurisdictions, two constitutions. Okay. 1900, Maxwell v. Dow. A guy named Maxwell is arrested and convicted of burglary, but he's never indicted by the grand jury, so he sues under the 14th Amendment due process clause again. He's claiming he's a 14th Amendment citizen of the United States. So what do you think that happens? It puts you in that other trust, right? A party to that other trust. So the court says, rules that the 14th Amendment privileges and immunities do not include the Bill of Rights. So when you go around claiming I'm a citizen of the United States or a U.S. citizen, I'm telling you the court is not going to let you, or you would not be recognized in having any of the Bill of Rights. Now, that doesn't
make sense. Fair, does it? No, it does not sound fair, but that's part of the trickery.
That's what's going on. That's exactly what's going on. And the trick is, again, is to get you to contractually volunteer to be under their other trust agreement. All right. 1901, Downs versus Bidwell. The court rules that Congress has unlimited legislative power over the territories. Then the court also states the term United States has a broader meaning than when used in the Constitution. It now includes all territories subject to the jurisdiction of the federal government, wherever located. So what they actually started in 1864, where they start changing the definitions of the words. State can now mean not just a union state, but it can mean a territory. Person can mean, not only a natural person, it can mean an artificial person, right? This is another way for them to get control, is to change the words we think what they mean, right? When I was a kid, the word gay meant you were happy. What do? They changed it to fit their political, benefits.
Agendas. Yeah.
Right. Now, Latin never changes. That's why the Pope in ecclesiastical canon law, trust law, uses Latin sometimes, is because the words of the meaning never change.
Well, it's
as it did 1,000 years ago. Go ahead.
It's still the official language of the Vatican.
Why is that? Because the words have never changed meaning. That's why they use it. Okay. So after that, the Crown strategy now becomes how to get the several states legally considered as territories, which is what we brought up earlier, so as to get total control. The new incorporated franchise states will become de facto military territories after March 9th, 1933. So you did ask the question earlier, how did the states or unincorporated rural areas get under that control? It happened with Proclamation 2040, which I'll go over. All right, 1906, the birth certificates come into play. They first gave them to women that were employees of the federal government. They said, hey, look, if you go down and record your birth in the county, we're going to give you 2 weeks paid vacation. So again, everybody's signing, I'll sign up for that. But once they started recording them, later they start registering them. Now, the word record and register mean two different things legally. When you register something, what you're doing is putting something into a trust. Register comes from the word regal. Regal meant back then, give to the king. So when you register a car, you register your child for school, you register the house deed, you are giving up the legal title to the asset over to them, and you're keeping the equitable title, which means the possession of it. Okay. So remember that the word register, when you hear that word, that means somebody's trying to form a trust, and likely they're trying to screw you. Okay.
Right.
Yes. So the government creates a sole corporation, artificial legal entity under operation of law. Now that's the straw man. And I think everyone finally believes that that's not a conspiracy theory. That's a real event. Okay. So really what happens at birth, Chris, when you were in your mother's womb, you were connected to the umbilical cord in the afterbirth. You were one whole unit, right? What happened the second the baby comes through the birth canal? They snip. Oh, Now they just cut you in two. Baby goes one way, right? And your parents grant you a name. You're in a trust. Okay, but because they register that birth, even your upper lowercase name, they have control of. You get use and possession of it your whole life in school, right? You get to use it, but you don't get to control it. Now, what happens with the afterbirth? Later, that comes through, and the umbilical cord is beating, and the placenta is normally beating also for a certain length of time. So under their laws, it is born alive but presumed to die. You would agree to that, right?
Yes.
All right.
And is that where the Cestui Qui Vie kind of comes into play with the conjunction of everything else?
Yes. The umbilical cord and the afterbirth, whose DNA is in there?
Mine.
Yours and your mom.
Yours and mine. You know, whoever it was that was born.
Right. So
I don't want to use birthed.
The state comes along and says, looks like the parents abandoned that property. They just left it. Okay, we're going to claim it. We're going to put a claim in on it. What do we call it? Well, whose DNA is it? We give it your name, but we put it in all caps because it is presumed to die. And all dead persons are in all capital letters, right?
Corporations.
Yes, corporations.
And it also goes into what is the term when everything is, there's a Latin term for, it'll come to my mind about capitis de minutio, de medium, and maxima.
Yes, there's 3 levels. And your highest level is the lower cap. Your intermediate level is upper lower, and your worst case is like a slave in the all caps, or you're dead.
Right.
Okay. All slave names were in all capital letters because it wasn't their real name. It was an artificial name given to them. Okay. So the state comes along, claims the property, names the property, and turns it into what we call a sole corporation, a corporation of one. All right. And the definition of a sole corporation is a public office occupied by a single natural person. So now you're kind of wedded and bonded to your straw man because you agree for your whole life that you're going to be responsible for that name, don't you? But again,
well, you assume it's you.
Right. It's not you. You're just agreeing to be liable, which means you're the surety. You're saying, like, I'm going to be the trustee of it. It really isn't me, but you are brought up through the schooling system to think it is you, right? Because when they call that name, you raise your hand or you say something, right? You've learned to respond to the name as if that is you when it is not you. Either name is actually not you, but that's what we've been taught. Okay.
Wow. No, I mean, I'm so glad that we did it in this manner too, because this is like really kind of solidifies a lot of things and really kind of fills in a lot more blanks that I've had.
The reasons why all of this is done is really about collateralizing more debt, because I'll get to 33 in a second and why the straw man was even created. There's a reason for it. There's actually a legitimate reason why they created it. All right, 1906, Hale versus Henkel. This is the most important Supreme Court case that you ever need to remember for now. The court rules there is a distinction between private natural persons and artificial persons. It rules that they're different. It has been quoted over 1,700 times. It's the most quoted case in the history of our country, okay? Because they use what I'm going to tell you right here. They use this so often. The right of the individuals are restricted only to the extent that they have been voluntarily surrendered by the citizenship to the agencies of government. So I'm going to repeat that. The rights of the individuals are restricted only to the extent that they have been voluntarily surrendered to the agencies of government. Okay, so you waive them when you sign a contract with the government. You waive them when you signed up to be a voter in that trust system. You waive them when you said, I'm a U.S. citizen on the passport application. You waive them when you said you're a U.S. citizen on the driver's license application. Okay?
Banking, etc., and so forth.
This is what it's telling you. It's telling you. Only
Hale versus Hinkle.
Surrendered by you. Colin Kaepernick waived and surrendered his rights when he signed that NFL contract. He did not have the right to kneel because they told him not to. They can tell him how to behave at the workplace. They have every right to do that, especially since he agreed that he would do it. You see what I mean? He has no legal standing to sue them. Now, I think he tried and they settled, but I'm telling you, the owners would have won because he waived his right to exercise his First Amendment rights. He waived them when he signed that NFL contract.
Which makes complete sense.
Right. This is what I'm telling you. Even Tim Tebow, same thing. Remember, years before, he knelt. They said, stop doing that. We're going to fine you. Right? And so he stopped because it's in the contract. You agreed to do it. Now, again, I'm telling you, there's a way to amend these contracts or to sign the contracts in a way that you're not taking the liability for it. You don't know that, but I'm telling you it's possible. So, but they trick you into thinking, oh, it's done deal. You got to abide by our rules, right? Okay. 1908, Twining versus New Jersey. The court rules the 14th Amendment privileges and immunities do not include the Bill of Rights. 1913, the Federal Reserve Act comes into place. I think everybody knows about that. 1914, Hendrick versus Maryland. Quote, a U.S. citizen upon leaving the District of Columbia becomes involved in interstate commerce as a resident does not have the common law right to travel as a citizen of the several states. Now, there was a case in 1907 where it said you could, but this one overruled that case. Everyone uses the 1907, I'm traveling, I got a right to travel. Well, 1914 comes along and says, no, you don't. Okay, especially if you signed a driver's license that says I'm a citizen of the United States. You just waived that right to be a traveler.
And when I've asked attorneys about this, the idea of traveling versus driving, they say you cannot use that argument. They didn't specify why. They just said it wasn't, but this explains why.
Yes, and if all you got to do is look up the word person, how they defined it in the Motor Vehicles Act of that state. Okay, person is defined as any individual, corporation, partnership, or association under Trading with the Enemy Act. Okay, so if you are one of those entities, okay, under that definition, which you are, unless you tell them otherwise, you've agreed to it. Okay, by their own statutes and codes, you agreed to it.
Okay,
that's why you don't have a right to travel. Now, as a free man, you do, but the point is, according to their computers, you're not a Union State citizen. You're a United States citizen. You see the difference? So you can't use their system, as a benefit and then say, no, I'm not. Again, they're going to give you the ticket. You know that, right?
Right. No, I agree.
Right. They're just, could you be let go by a nice cop? Yes. But under their rules, you're still liable. Okay. Now, how I get away with it is, yes, I use a license, but it's in the name of my trust. all of my public stuff is done by a private trust. And that's how I stay in the private. I stay in the republic. I don't step foot on the democracy. Okay. I have my private trust do that. Okay. And he does all those things. He's the one that has the license. It's his name, not my name. Okay. And thus, when I carry it, I can do it. I have no trouble. Cop pulls me over, takes the license back. He swoops it in the computer. It says, do not detain, do not arrest. He comes back usually within 2 minutes, maybe 3, and says, here you go, have a nice day. Now, isn't that a lot easier than arguing with a cop at the roadside?
Oh, 100%. And this is also ultimately, if you were to get involved with what KL is doing, this is what he ultimately is teaching. This is not ultimately what you're going to get from these series.
That you will not be hassled anymore. And it doesn't matter whether you have a license or not. What you want is for you to come up in the right thing on their computer. That's what you want. That's what, again, unless you harm someone. Let's say you hit somebody with your car. Well, I got news for you. They can pull you even from the republic onto their jurisdiction if you harm. And that's according to the Constitution, right? There's an injured party. So if you injured a person or their property, then he can give you a ticket for failure to yield. Would that see? The exception is if there's an injured party. All right. Which it should be. You shouldn't get away with scot-free harming people and have no, not being able to fix that, right? It's to me, it makes perfect sense that they could pull you in if you truly do harm someone's person or property.
I agree. No, I mean, it's part of the non-aggression principle. Treat people how you're going to be treated. Don't cause harm.
Yes. All right. So 1917 comes along. Trading with the Enemy Act. This is the very first one. So some unknown guy you've probably never heard of was Assistant Secretary of the Navy. His name was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And he submits this Trading with the Enemy Act to Congress. And at the time, well, first of all, it creates the Office of Alien Property Custodian that they'll use in 33. And then it excludes all persons inside the United States. So everyone that is inside the United States are not considered an enemy. But anyone outside, because we are in the First World War, we're considered an enemy. So you're like, oh, okay, I get it. I understand it. All right, let it be. All right, 1918 comes along, and there was a guy in the White House called Colonel Edward Mandell House. And he was, I don't know his true title, but he was a big assistant to Woodrow Wilson, okay, the president. And he made a speech, and of course they wrote it down, and this was his speech. In a meeting with Woodrow Wilson, very soon every American will be required to register their biological property, birth certificate, in a natural system designed to keep track of the people, and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. You're going to pledge your future labor to pay the debt. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. They hadn't even brought it yet till 33. This is 15 years before it even happened. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, which is property, and we will hold a security interest over them forever by operation of law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, remember, he's using the right words, American nationals, by unknowingly or unwittingly deliver the bills of lading, the birth certificates to us, they will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure our plans out. And if by accident one or two should, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. This is the only way logically to fund government by floating liens and debts to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. That's, again, the definition of a trust. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Every American will unknowingly be our servant. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office presidency of our dummy corporation, United States of America, Inc., to foment this plot against America. Wow. Was that a mouthful? And again, I want to tell you, they're setting this up to happen in 15 years. They're not putting this into play yet. They're waiting for an emergency. Okay? They're waiting for an emergency. They're waiting for a distraction, right? The Civil War, huge distraction, why we restructured the debt, right? It's always about creating an emergency distraction so you don't see what's really going on. All right. So 1929, stock market crashes. Remember, so 1860 plus 70 brings us to what time frame? 1930. What happens around 1930? Stock market crashes. Everybody's poor, right?
Which we're about to re-experience here anytime soon.
Yes. And then I remember that old Assistant Secretary of the Navy, somehow he got to become president. And his middle name, Delano, in case you don't know, is an Italian banking family. So do you think he was on the side of the bankers and they had him in his pocket? Absolutely. So March 4th, 1933, FDR takes the oath of office. It's a Saturday. Now, for some unknown reason, the next inauguration is moved to January 20th. Because in case you don't remember, all our presidents were sworn in on March 4th.
I learned that after the Trump election, the Trump-Biden election. I found that to be interesting.
Well, it's more than interesting. That means something happened. Something major happened to change the date. Okay? A new form of government came in. Okay? And that new form of government puts his presidency in a different date than the Republic. Okay? So again, it's telling you something else is going on. We're bringing in a different government, probably different jurisdictions. Again, and some people did notice, McFadden, he, I think, prepared treason charges against the Federal Reserve Board. Then he later died due to some unknown poison. Yeah. But you see how things really work. So Monday comes along after FDR is inaugurated. He declares a national emergency. It's called the National Banking Emergency. Proclamation 29. And this is very important. This national emergency has the same effect as going to war. Even though we weren't at war, he's saying it's as if we were at war. It gives the President of the United States unlimited power over the territories, okay, but not the states yet. This is Military Occupation, Article 2 under Emergency War Powers Act, form of government. The states of Florida, states of Illinois. Remember those corporate states, the corporate states, which is the piece of paper, they become the conquered, the de facto military occupied territories, not the land. It's like an invisible jurisdiction. Remember the umbrella I was talking about, okay? Those corporate state of Illinois or whatever state you're under. Mm-hmm. It's not really on the land. You're kind of under it. All you got to do is get out from under it, okay? So, and all of this, just kind of like they put all property in a trust. When they took away the money, the same thing in 33, they put all the property in trust, okay? Why? Because they say, well, without real money, the legal title can't move anywhere. So we got to hold it in trust, for your benefit. We're going to put it all in trust for your benefit. Right. So Thursday comes along. He has another proclamation, 2040, and the Emergency Bank and Relief Act amends the 1917 Trading with the Enemy Act. Now is brought inland to apply to any person defined under the Trading with the Enemy Act. All persons are defined as individuals, corporations, associations, or partnerships. Just like I said, how they describe persons, a driver, underneath your motor vehicle code. They are now deemed rebels, belligerents, and enemies of the state. All publicly registered property is placed into a trust via the emergency. This includes even the public straw man. Okay? So the straw man had to be put in the trust to get under the so you could be under the jurisdiction. See, you're technically, because you're being liable and you say you're the name, that's what puts you under the jurisdiction. When it really isn't you, the flesh and blood man. It's your straw man that's under their jurisdiction. Make sense?
Yeah, and that would be kind of like an act of what? Manufactured consent?
Yes, right. So now you understand why my thing is you got to sever that bond. You got to separate yourself from that straw man. Because that's the only way you're not liable anymore. Once you do that, boom, you're outside of the umbrella, you're back on the land, you have your rights again. So you have to, one of the key things is to separate that yourself from the straw man legally, not just say it. You can actually do it legally
and lawfully.
And lawfully, you can do it both ways. All right. Now here's the big takeaway. We're still under that order today because the national emergency has never been rescinded. Okay. We're still under the 1933 emergency. Now, you'll see presidents all day long declare this emergency, the fentanyl emergency, this, that, or whatever, right? Well, in the 70s, since, the president started doing all that shit, Congress said, look, for now on, emergencies can only last 2 years, okay? Then you'd have to do another one. But guess which one they made an exception to? They said all emergencies except for the Trading with the Enemy Act one is got a time limit on it of 2 years, but that one's still in effect.
Do you have like somewhere that you cite that information from?
Yeah, I think it happened in 1976. Congress made that in their they passed that said only emergencies declared by the government or by POTUS can only last 2 years except for the Emergency Banking Relief Act amendment. That's how they word it. They don't tell you it's the Trading with the Enemy. They say the amendment to the Emergency Banking Relief Act. Okay,
and then and no president since that time period has done anything to end that act.
Correct. But only, and see, here's the thing: when they make proclamations, only a president can undo that proclamation.
Which is why I was asking you: has any president since then undone it?
No.
So we're still under that act.
That's right.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to clarify.
The Trump lovers, why didn't Trump rescind 2040? That'd be a good question for him, wouldn't it? He had the power. He could have put us back in a republic like that, but he didn't.
You said that before.
Do I think that would cause chaos? Yes, but he had the power to do it. Okay. So in 1933, the Congress said the ownership, trusteeship, here we go with trust again, of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government, the citizens amounting to mere user. You just get to use everything. Now, when you click on a program, let's say Facebook, whatever, right? YouTube, don't you check that user agreement? I agree to the terms and conditions.
What do you think? You have to use it.
What did you just do?
Right. You didn't read it.
You just entered a trust agreement. You said, you get to control it. You get to tell me what to do. I got to abide by your rules, and I just get to use it. I get possession of it. Okay.
So does that make all contracts a trust?
No, all trusts are contracts, but not all contracts are trusts.
So what makes the terms and conditions of a social media platform a trust versus a contract?
Because the titles are split where you don't get control of that account. They do. You just got use of that account. So you have to look at the relationship of what's going on. Now, I've been telling you that you can amend these contracts, okay? Because you can write to Facebook and say, you know what? I'm reserving all my rights. I don't agree to all the terms and conditions. And boom, you just killed it. Now they don't have control over you.
Well, they don't have to let you use the platform without you accepting their terms and conditions, right?
But most of them, there's only been, I've run into with DNA Ancestry where they really got vehement about, I can't, see, I write a letter saying, I'm now appointing you the trustee, all right? And you have to do everything legally for my benefit. And they got a hold of me lickety-split and said, you know what, we can't do that. Because I said, once I did the DNA stuff, I wrote to them, I said, I'm forming a trust. You're going to be the trustee. And I'm telling you, you can't share that information with any government agency. Of course, they contacted me within 72 hours. The corporate office, some assistant to the CEO says, we can't do that. But I tell you what we'll do. We're going to refund all your money and we will take your information off our computers. Would that be okay with you? I said, that would be okay with me. Now, how do I know they did that? Well, I have sons, daughters, sisters, brothers who've got their DNA, and I don't come up as a near relative. So I'm gone out of their system.
You're like a ghost.
I'm a ghost. But
Mr. Beneficiary.
I'm trying to explain that you can amend these contracts if you want to. You don't have to bend over and take it, because you have the power. You just don't know you have the power. Okay. Which brings us to what? Around 1935. After that, Social Security Act. So here's where when you sign up for Social Security, it really isn't you. You're signing up your straw man for the Social Security. That's who the account is for. The straw man, not you. That's why you cannot close that account. You cannot alter that account. It was for the artificial entity. Okay. So again, a lot of the other people, like I won't name them, tells you to go rescind your Social Security number or go close that account and ask for all the money back. I'm telling you that's impossible. It won't happen because they control it. All right. And there's so much money in that fund that's the collateral to print the Federal Reserve notes. They are never going to close that account. And that's what you call the Cestui Qui account. Okay. So Chris, a big distinction here. A Cestui Qui Vie trust, the word V means living. That's a trust for the living man. But a Cestui Qui trust is for the straw man. So everyone's talking about getting access to the Cestui Qui trust, the one with the artificial name on it, the one that they created, the one that has the hundreds of millions of dollars in it. Okay. It's not called the Cestui Qui Vie trust. It's called a Cestui Qui trust. And you know what the word Cestui Qui means in Latin?
I've looked this up. I don't remember. No.
Beneficiary. For the beneficiary.
For the beneficiary.
So why do I claim that position? Do you understand why I keep saying I'm the beneficiary?
This is why you're known as Mr. Beneficiary.
That's right. Because that's my position on that trust. I am not the trustee. I don't want to have anything to do with that office. The title of my office is Mr. Beneficiary, and that's where I'm going to stay, in the public.
Okay.
All right. A couple more cases. 1935, Colgate versus Harvey. The governments of the United States and each of the several states are distinct from one another. 1936, Wheeling Steel Corp versus Fox. Quote, therefore, the U.S. citizens residing in one of the states of the Union are classified as property and franchises of the federal government of an individual entity. Now, what do they mean when they qualify you as franchises? Well, 1871, the District of Columbia becomes the parent corporation. They make a franchise called the State of Illinois. The State of Illinois creates another subcorporation franchise called a straw man. Okay. So you see, it's just franchises inside of franchises inside of franchises. Okay. Okay. They're all controlled way back when. That's why you're looked at. And if you agree to be the straw man or you agree to be liable, that's why they call you a franchisee. Okay. And in the trust triangle, where is franchisee? It's right under the trustee. Okay. That's where you're at in the trust as a franchisee. All right. 1938, I told you earlier about the two cases, the Erie Railroad case and the U.S. versus Caroline Products. All common law rights are now outlawed. They're gone. All cases now under the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure and U.S. Code 1 through 50. So again, all this code never happened. We had laws, right? Laws are different than statutes and codes. Here's the legal definition of a statute or code. A statute or code has the effect of law, but only with your consent. So do you see why they need your consent to get you under these codes and statutes and acts? Okay.
Yeah. See why they need this manufactured consent, sir.
Yes. Yes. Under the Constitution, there were laws that applied to everyone. Under the statutes and codes, it's just if you give consent. And then also they're arbitrary, which means the president or anybody in a powerful position can say, what was that Affordable Care Act? He goes, right when they passed it, he said, well, I'm going to make an exception. I'm going to let the Fortune 500 companies have a 5-year grace period, right? And then he put his hand behind his back and said, if you contribute to my campaign, I'll let you have that exemption. Okay. Because it's arbitrary. It's up to the boss to decide who has the rules be enforced to, their corporate bylaws. So he gets to decide he can enforce them on anybody he wants or not enforce them. That's not the system we were brought up under, right? Laws apply to everybody, but we're not under that system. That's why everyone has this cognitive dissonance about why won't they follow the law? Well, they're not under the law. They're under a different trust, a different jurisdiction. They don't have to follow the Constitution, okay? I want to be under the Constitution. That's where I want to live, okay? So I choose to do that. And I've chosen to get out from underneath the umbrella of the statutory jurisdiction. Okay?
Okay.
All right. 1939, Hague versus CIO. The first 8 amendments have uniformly been held not to be protected from state action by the Privileges and Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment. So over and over and over again, I keep telling you, if you claim you're a U.S. citizen or a citizen of the United States, you just waived your Bill of Rights. Period. Okay? When you hire an attorney, guess what you just did? You just waived your Bill of Rights. They don't tell you that, do they? But that's exactly what happened. Okay? 1939, court rules every person now liable for income taxes. Person. Okay? What's the definition of person? Being defined under the Trading with the Enemy Act, which I went over twice already. Uniform Commercial Code now enacted in every state. All previous laws under common law or equity are now codified, turned into some kind of code, into statutes in every state. All state and federal courts are military courtrooms under executive emergency war powers for rebels, belligerents, and enemies of the state, which is true, except for there are certain courts for people like me, okay, that are Union State citizens. I can get my remedy in a different courtroom, okay, which I should. In other words, you know, the republic is still here. You just need to know how to access the republic, okay?
Right.
All right, the Buck Act comes along. I talked about this earlier. 1940, this allowed any department of the federal government to create a federal area for imposition of the Public Safety Act. In 1939, this created special federal zones like schools, airports, post offices. All are now under territorial jurisdiction, C jurisdiction, you know, codes, statutes, acts, not under the Constitution. 2 distinct jurisdictions, 2 distinct governments. All right. 1945, Hooven Allison v. Evatt conclusively affirmed that there are 2 distinctively different United States with 2 opposite forms of government. So I can't tell you enough. It's the Supreme Court is telling you this. It isn't just my opinion. Okay. 1972, Milosevsky versus Sears and Roebuck. We have 2 governments in America, one under the Constitution and one much greater that is not under the Constitution. In short, the applicability of our Bill of Rights is in one of the crucial facts of American life today. American nationals are owed the Bill of Rights, as they always have been. U.S. citizens are not owed the Bill of Rights. So there you have the Supreme Court using the term American nationals. All right. 1976, Foreign Sovereignty Immunity Act. This places all state statutes under UCC maritime law. Title 22, U.S. Code, all public officials designated as foreign agents. So when you become a mayor or whatever, what happens is your foreign relationships require an oath of office. Their union state citizenship is relinquished. They actually give up for a temporary time frame their union state citizenship and they become U.S. citizens only. So now they're really under the control of the territorial government. Okay? Now there's 3 exceptions. That's the Attorney General, the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of the Treasury. Okay, those are the 3 exceptions to that rule. Okay, they actually work for a foreign government because they're not part of it. 1933, Jones versus Temer. The Privileges and Immunities Clause of the 14th Amendment protects very few rights because it neither incorporates the Bill of Rights nor protects all the rights of individual citizens. Instead, this provision protects only those rights peculiar to being a citizen of the federal government. It does not protect those rights which relate to state citizenship. All right. A couple cases, important ones. I'm finishing up. 1996, U.S. versus Austin Gary Cooper. Now, this is not a U.S. Supreme Court. This was a federal tax court in southern Florida. It gives a case number 2. Mr. Cooper was being prosecuted for not filing an income tax return. Cooper elicited a staggering disclosure from the judge that there are simultaneously two citizenships, United States citizens and American citizens. So this is a portion of the transcript. Cooper, Judge, I want a judicial determination. Am I an American citizen or am I a United States citizen? Judge says you're both, which is what I've been telling you. You are the United States citizen with a wrapping of a United States citizen, both. You have two citizenships. I know schools never taught us this, did they?
No.
You have two different citizenships you can claim. Which one do you want to claim? I personally, again, got rid of the blue coat, took it off, and now I am my birthright citizenship. Okay. I choose not to use that other one. All right. The Department of Justice. Here's the key thing. This gets back to Hale versus Henkel. The Department of Justice, Linda Kozlowski, revealed, quote, United States citizenship is based strictly on contract. Remember, I told you this, just like an HOA. He pays Social Security and he uses the Postal Service. Thus, this constitutes co-suretyship. Therefore, he is a U.S. citizen. And again, surety is defined as a person who is liable for the payment of another's debt or performance of another's obligation. So he should have said something, but he didn't. He should have said, well, I'm not. The straw man gets the Social Security. The straw man is using the United States Postal Service. Okay? He didn't say that, but he could have. I'm just telling you where he goes wrong. He didn't understand either that there's two different citizenships. But this is a case where the judge says it in open court.
Right.
I mean, that's huge. That's absolutely huge. Because normally they're sworn to secrecy, never to say nothing about this stuff. All right. So in 1933, when they took away the money, again, the national emergency, they restructured the debt again. Okay. I'm sorry for jumping backwards.
You're fine.
Just like before, the bankers come to the politicians and say, look, a long time ago, we got legal title to the federal lands and buildings. You put in a central bank. Thank you very much. And then when we had to restructure it again after the Civil War, you gave us legal title to the state buildings and all the state land. Yeah, we really appreciate that. You put in the 14th Amendment. Thank you very much. But this time we got to have more collateral. Okay, so what can you give us that will allow us to lend you more money? Okay, so they have an emergency meeting of the governors. The governors agree that to pledge the future income of the straw man as collateral to restructure the debt. Okay, so it's based on remember the pledging issue. Pledging is that the government's pledged the income from the straw man, which again, because it was a straw man, it was under the 16th Amendment. You could tax the straw man. So those future taxes are pledged to as collateral to keep printing money. Okay?
Right.
Makes total sense. In other words, they really don't just make it out of thin air. There really is collateral. There really is reserve. And the reserve that they're presently using are those Cestui Qui accounts in the Social Security account that have between $500 million and $5 billion in everybody's account. That's a whole lot of money on the private side. That's credit. That's not debt. That is credit, which is underwriting, I should say, the debt. Okay.
Now, real quick, when you continue on with 2014 and 2015, people can clearly see this information. This is an area that I want to tread carefully with the YouTube algorithm.
All right.
So,
all right. Then just say so. We'll just skip it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry. That's why I'm saying is I want to put attention to the fact that I want people to read what's in 2014 and 2015, but we're not going to go into a discussion about it because I just don't want to have any issues with the YouTube overlords and the algorithm. I've learned to play a better game of chess, KL. Well, and
I can say it without saying those words.
That's fine.
The debt comes due in 2000. Well, what has happened in September 11, 2001? We get a big national distraction, right? And they say, of course, we got to restructure this. Now, under international bankruptcy laws.
And you're referring to 9/11, which we can talk about 9/11.
Okay. All right. So we're supposed to have a jubilee. In other words, the international bankers say, there's so much debt that can never be repaid. We're going to forgive the debt. And the debt, when that term is called the jubilee. And the jubilee was supposed to be announced September 11th, 10 a.m. in the morning. Well, what happened at 8:45 that same day? Big national.
Unfortunate events that we just recently celebrated an anniversary of.
It's just the wildest coincidence that happened an hour before they were going to announce the Jubilee and we were going to no longer be in debt.
21.
Just
yeah.
Unbelievable. Yes. So they give the government 20 years, a 20-year grace period to figure out, are we going to Jubilee it or are we going to restructure and go back into debt? And that's what those two paragraphs are about, is what would happen or how would we go back into debt in order to bring in collateral to print more fiat money. That's all that says. Okay. But it is important. I think it's another thing which shows you they have to do it in their trust law way. There has to be collateral. They have to get you to volunteer to be the collateral, right? So again, it's not phony. It's deceptive and it's fraudulent, but it's real, is what I would say. Okay. So 2015, these are two big cases that American nationals can use. 2015, Puerto Rico versus Sanchez Valley. The right to trace authority under federal law is sourced from Congress. The difference between Congress passing laws for the territories and Congress passing laws for the union is political status. And that's where we came up with the term political status changes, meaning there's two separate things going on. You need to change your political status in order to know which laws or statutes apply to you. Okay? 2018, big case, U.S. versus Ortiz, and the court's ruling, the people being the beneficiaries of the 1788 First Constitutional Trust. Wow, they actually used the word beneficiaries. That means that was a trust. The people are not district citizens. The people meaning the beneficiaries, the Union State citizens, are what we call American nationals. That's what people means. The people are not subject to territorial jurisdiction. Wow, that's fantastic. The people are aligned with the beneficiaries of the official government of the United States. The people are exclusive only to birthright, civilian, judicial power of Article 3. The real Union State citizens belong under Article 3, which is the judiciary. Okay? Not under Article 1 or 2. That's where our rights from Article 4 are enforced, or under Article 3. The people are exclusive to Union citizen nationals of the several states. The people are exclusive to private civilian citizens of the United States. Public rights belong to the people at large, while private rights belong only to the individual. So when you become people, like when you bring on an attorney, you're not one person anymore. You're two persons, right? Now you're a group of people. Now you just waived your unalienable individual rights. All right? Unalienable means your rights can't be taken away by anyone. You can only waive them. I've said that several times. Okay, so 2020, that gets into that thing I talked about over, and I'm just going to summarize a little bit here. So in summary, there are two governments in America today, and there always have been, right from the very start, okay? The Republic and the democracy, okay? Two different constitutional trusts, one in 1789, one in 1871. One has common law and equity. Everyone misses that equity. When we brought the Constitution, read their writings. It was common law and English American equity is what they call it. Equity is a whole different subject, but it wasn't just common law, okay? Equity was more ecclesiastical, all right, biblical law, all right. Trust law, that's the other thing. Equity is trust law. That's where you want to be. So one had common law and equity, and the other one has the Roman civil law. Two different citizenships. You're either a Union state or a United States citizen. Two different jurisdictions. The democracy, sea jurisdiction, and the Republic, which has the land jurisdiction. And again, the democracy has Article 1 and Article 2. Okay, you're always in statutes of codes, you're always in sea jurisdiction without any, I told you, what was there, over a dozen cases I told you where you do not have the Bill of Rights. Okay, if you're in the land jurisdiction, then you will have the Bill of Rights. Okay, two different kinds of species, public tender, lawful species. Two different persons, artificial and natural. Okay. Do you want to stop at this point, or?
I mean, if you want to, let me see how much more stuff we have here.
I'm just going to do the military government stuff. I'm going to forget the other stuff.
Okay, now I do want to real quick, because I mean, last time we did this, we broke it into 2 parts. I decided just to go ahead and keep it fluid, for this conversation as well. I will specify I've been sharing across the screen a bunch of information throughout the video. If you want copies of KL's documents from this video, email a request to ricemediagroup@protonmail.com and put KL in the subject line. Also, KL's contact information details will be in the video description.
Right.
So what was the last thing that you want to talk about before we do wrap up? And again, I really appreciate your time.
1933, when the military occupation came in, that's when the gold fringe came back on the flags. Okay. That's why when you go into any courtroom, whether state, federal, or wherever, it's going to have the flag with the gold fringe on it. It's telling you that there's currently a military occupation taking place, which means, again, their courts were created by Article 1 and they're being run by Article 2. The way you know that is on top of the flagpole is the eagle, and that's POTUS's seal. Okay. The eagle on the flagpole means that's Article 2. They're controlling it. They're the executive power. Nowhere on there does it say you're in Article 3 jurisdiction. Now, I know all these patriots think they can go in and claim common law and all that. They can't. You can't be charged in one jurisdiction and defend in another, because that jurisdiction is not there for you. You have to specifically ask for it in your pleadings. You just can't say, Judge, you're crazy. This is a common law court of record. They're going to think you're incompetent. Go ahead.
And you're saying 1933 was when officially the yellow fringe flag with the eagle on top would have been placed in courts?
For sure by 1938, when they get away. By 1938, that's when they outlawed common law.
So between 1933 and 1938.
Cases, 2 Supreme Court cases said no longer, we're going to have it. We're going to do without it. We're going to keep equity, which is where your remedy is in equity courts. But because we're going to merge them with the territory, you're not going to be able to see where it's at. We're hiding it. Okay. But the point is, it's still here. Okay. And I'm just telling you, there really are Article 3 courts, and there really is a courtroom for Union State citizens. You don't have to fight them in their courts. You can take them into your courts if you do it properly. Okay. But that takes a lot of knowledge. Go ahead.
And you mentioned too, like one of the things, because I know that you've done some previous, I don't know if you want to use the word subcontracting, but you've done some collaborations with American States Assembly. But one of your biggest disagreements, aside from the term that's being used for status correction, is the Article 3.
Yes, they don't believe in Article 3 courts, and I keep trying to tell them they're there. Okay, so I wrote up a amicus brief, which is a friend of the court, which means you come in saying, I'm not the defendant, I'm not the trustee, I'm just a friend of the court, and the reason I'm here is because I'm a beneficiary. I have an interest in the trust that's going on today, so I actually can speak, and I can be here without being the trustee. So I wrote up a 32-page brief for people like hers to use, which basically centers on this. You don't argue the case, you argue the jurisdiction. So, Your Honor, before we even start this case, I'm challenging in personam jurisdiction. And until you can prove it, we can't go forward. We're not going to argue the case. So let's just forget about that right now. You and the prosecutor have to prove you have jurisdiction over me, the man. And until you do that, then we can't go anywhere. The case cannot go forward. Okay?
Okay.
Well, a total different approach, just like my different approach with the police. I'm not going to sit there and argue the case, because then once you argue the case, you've surrendered jurisdiction, you waived your rights, and now you're at their mercy. Now you really have to be smart to win the case. You challenge jurisdiction and make them prove it, which they cannot. If you have your ducks in a row, then the case just gets dismissed. To me, that's just an easier way to do it.
Smarter way.
But again, that's only if you haven't harmed somebody or property. So any ticket, violation, code, statute, blah, blah crap doesn't apply to me. I'm sorry that you don't have jurisdiction on me for those kinds of issues. And that's just what you have to, the responsible adult thing, if you want to govern yourself, is to tell them when they send you a letter in the mail, is to respond and say, hey, you got the wrong person. That's not me. And oh, by the way, I'm not under your jurisdiction. you handle it in a responsible adult manner. You see what I mean? It's just simpler, and you don't get upset. You
and
don't
it's
yell,
non-combative.
You don't, right. It's non-adversarial,
which is important.
But it doesn't have to be.
Because when you're not adversarial in a legal or lawful setting, you stay in honor.
Yes, I stay in honor completely. That's the whole point. That's my, I say come from. That's the area I come from. Right? I want to be in honor. I want to be responsible. I want to do the right thing. And I'm telling you, I created this affidavit. Now you show cause why the affidavit is not true. I just threw the hot potato right at them. They caught it. Now they're going to try to throw it back, but they can't. So whoever has the hot potato is the liable guy, right? So are they going to pay the ticket themselves? No. They're just going to dismiss the case.
Right.
Okay.
Was there anything else from this particular show notes that you wanted to cover?
Well, no, not really. Just, about the military government, even state nationals. Okay. I'm going to use that term that they use. U.S. national or state national are under the emergency occupation, are under C jurisdiction. When you quote, I'm a state national under 8 U.S.C. 1101A, paragraph 21, you're admitting and voluntarily saying that you're under their jurisdiction. That's why I don't do things like they do.
Which makes sense. If you're going to be using U.S. code, it still puts you under U.S. code.
Right.
You actually may be giving up rights that you don't need to give up.
Correct. I can tell you, if you're in a court of equity in the right court and you quote a code, you go, yeah, but Your Honor, according to USC 8 blah, 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 he's going to switch the mode and you go right back into C jurisdiction. You cannot quote code when you're in the right court. You just can't. They will chop your head off.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Right.
So, okay, real quick. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's all about, again, knowing these two different jurisdictions and that there's two governments, two different jurisdictions, two different citizenships. You have the divine right by God to choose. Okay. He gave you free will, didn't he?
Yes.
So isn't it up to you?
It is. It's up to me. It's up to you. It's up to all of us. So again, now what I want to tell people again, they can check out the playlist that I will have in the video description, as well as everything else that I mentioned and we talked about on today's show. In addition to this, me and KL are trying to work out a schedule. He's getting ready to go on vacation, but he will be back on soon, and it will be repetitious because we'll be going through his second session, lesson, course, whatever you want to call it. We're going to be going over that. And then I want to let people know that we were ultimately going to move beyond what we've talked about initially. And that was the reason why I wanted to reach back out to you. But this refresher thing and going back over this information, it feels so brand new that I'm so glad that we did it this way. And I really hope people found value from this conversation. And again, I can't stress enough how much I appreciate your time, because I mean, we did have some little technical difficulties, and I think we've been going on total between, we're recording right now about 2 minutes, 12 seconds, but probably add another half hour before that. So almost 3 hours of this man's time. I appreciate you, my friend. Do you have any final thoughts or anything you want to add before
I'll leave you one thing? The Wizard of Oz. Everybody's seen the movie. At the very end, Dorothy, what you call the wizard, agrees to take her back to Kansas, right? But she misses her ride, right? So what happens? The good witch of the north comes flying down and says, Dorothy, you had the power all along. You just didn't know you had it. All you got to do is click your heels 3 times together and you'll be back there. And I'm telling you that you had the power all along. You just don't know it, but you just got to do it. Okay.
Can you hear me clicking my heels?
The heels means put the mirror up and say, you know what? I'm mad. It was deceptive. It was fraud. But now that I know, I'm going to do something about it. That's what a responsible Union State citizen would do.
I love it. And thank you again for your time, man. Bear with me real quick. I'm just going to wrap up the video. So, ladies and gentlemen, again, I do appreciate you tuning in. I flashed information about how you can obtain the documents from today's video, as well as KL's contact and detail information. If this is your first time ever watching any of my videos, make sure you do check out and explore my channel. If you do like this kind of content, I have a playlist for my law series with a bunch of different people that I've been interviewing, but KL is definitely one of my favorites. Make sure you subscribed, and I'm going to leave you with this. Be a blessing to others because it comes back around. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be the change you want to see in this world. Be the glitch you want to see in the matrix. Practice change.